It was a bright morning in December. Mr. Jacob, a hardworking farmer, was preparing to travel to his village with his family for the holidays. His wife, Mama Grace, packed their food, water, and gifts for their relatives. She was a prayerful woman and wanted them to pray before they left. "Let's pray before we start," Jacob, Mama Grace said. But Jacob laughed. "We don't need to pray. The road is clear. The car is strong," he replied. Mama Grace didn't argue, but she whispered a short prayer while Jacob wasn't looking. She loved her husband, but he had sometimes too proud to listen. Their 3 children, Sarah, Mike, and little Timmy, were excited about the trip. They climbed into the car with happy faces. Mama Grace sat quietly, feeling uneasy but trusting God. The family waved goodbye to their neighbors and started with their long journey to the village. The road ahead seemed peaceful, but danger was waiting for them. As they drove, they passed a man standing by the roadside. He wanted at them, asking for a ride. Jacob slowed down the car, but then decided not to stop. "We don't have time to pick up strangers," he said. Mama Grace turned to look at the man. He seemed kind and harmless, but Jacob was already driving away. Suddenly, Mama Grace felt her heart skip a beat. She sensed something was wrong but kept quiet. "Lord, protect us," she prayed silently. Meanwhile, the man by the roadside watched their car disappear. He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone with bad intentions. Unseen to Jacob and his family, the man muttered strange words and disappeared into the bushes. Trouble was coming. The sun was shining when they left, but soon dark clouds covered the sky. Rain started to fall heavily, and the road became slippery. "We should stop and wait for the rain to pass," Mama Grace suggested. But Jacob shook his head. "We can't waste time. I know how to drive in the rain," he said proudly. As they drove, the rain grew heavier. The children started to cry because they were scared. Mama Grace held them close and whispered comforting words. Jacob struggled to see the road. His hands gripped the steering tightly, but the car slid on the wet road. "God help us," Mama Grace prayed aloud this time. Jacob didn't reply, but deep inside, he was also scared. Just ahead, a sharp bend was waiting for them. Jacob tried to turn the car, but it skipped off the road and hit a tree. The car shook violently and came to a stop. The children screamed. Mama Grace held onto them tightly, praying loudly for safety. Jacob got out of the car to check the damage. The front of the car was badly crushed. "This is bad," he said, scratching his head. The rain slowed down, but the family was stuck in the middle of nowhere. The road was empty, and no one came to help. Mama Grace knelt beside the car and prayed again. "Lord, send us help. We can't do this alone," she whispered. Jacob watched her and felt ashamed. Maybe they should have prayed before leaving after all. As they waited, a man appeared from the bushes. He wore a white shirt and carried a lantern, even though it was daytime. "Do you need help?" the man asked with a warm smile. Jacob hesitated but nodded. "Yes, our car is damaged," he said. The man looked at the car and shook his head. "You are lucky to be alive. This place is dangerous," he said. Mama Grace felt peace when she saw the man. She believed he was sent by God. The man helped them push the car to the side of the road. "You must pray before you continue," the man said. Then he turned and walked away without saying goodbye. That night, the family stayed at a small lodge nearby. Jacob couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the accident and the man who helped them. When he finally slept, he had a strange dream. In the dream, the man they refused to pick up was laughing at him. "You ignored me, but your wife's prayer saved you," the man said. Jacob woke up sweating. He realized the man was not an ordinary stranger. He was sent to test their faith. Jacob knelt by the bed and prayed for the first time in years. He asked God to forgive him for being stubborn. Mama Grace woke up and smiled. She had been praying for Jacob to change, and now her prayers were being answered. The next morning, a mechanic came to fix the car. Jacob paid him and thanked him with a new sense of humility. Before they left, Jacob gathered his family. "Let's pray together before we continue our journey," he said. Mama Grace smiled proudly. She led the prayer, asking God for protection and guidance. The children also joined in, repeating the words after their mother. This time, the road seemed brighter and the journey felt smoother. Jacob drove carefully and the family sang songs of praise. They reached the village safely, greeted by relatives with hugs and laughter. In the village, an elder came to visit Jacob. He said him about the strange man who had been seen near the road. "That man causes accidents for travelers," the elder warned. Jacob's heart sank. He realized they had escaped something terrible because of Mama Grace's prayer. He shared his story with the elder, who nodded wisely. "Prayer is your strongest weapon. Never forget that," the elder said. Jacob promised to always pray before traveling. He hugged Mama Grace and thanked her for her faith. During the rest of their stay in the village, Jacob became a different man. He joined his wife in daily prayers and even led some. The children noticed the change in their father. "Papa is praying now," little Timmy said with a big smile. Mama Grace felt her heart swell with joy. Her husband had finally learned the importance of trusting God. Jacob also shared his story with friends and neighbors, encouraging them to pray before traveling. When it was time to return home, the family gathered to pray again. This time, Jacob led the prayer. His voice was steady and his words were heartfelt. The journey back was peaceful, with no accidents or troubles. The family arrived home safely, thanking God for his protection. From that day on, Jacob became known as a man of faith. He always reminded others of the power of prayer. The story of Jacob and Mama Grace spread throughout the village, teaching everyone to trust in God and never take a journey without prayer.